An advisory group announced in May by the Minister of Education has rejected the Minister's plans for a global budget funding system going ahead. Being described by critics as the return of bulk funding, global budgets would see schools given their funding in a lump sum and then splitting the money themselves between teaching staff and operating costs. Opposition to it has seen teacher unions, the PPTA and NZEI, hold unprecedented joint meetings throughout the country, attended by thousands of teachers. So union opposition to this was very much a given. But the Minister's advisory group also included principals and school trustees, groups the Minister might have had a higher expectation of getting support from. Education Minister Hekia Parata joins us now live from our gallery office. Welcome to Checkpoint, Minister. Nice to have you with us, and thanks for wandering down to the gallery office so you could be on camera. Are you disappointed that there was an oppose vote to the global budget?
Well, the whole point of setting up the advisory group was so that we could test these ideas. That's very explicit in the Cabinet paper that underpinned this advisory group. And so, you know, that particular one, which is a mechanism for providing funding, it isn't how funding is determined, is one that the advisory group has said they don't recommend that it progress, but they have agreed that the other 6 of the total 7 should proceed.
Yeah, I want to come back to those, but can we just look at the global budget, the global funding? That's gone now, isn't it? You're not going to push through with this. Now, I know you haven't made that formal decision and this is a cabinet matter and all of those sorts of things, but actually it's not going to happen, is it?
So no, I'm not going to preempt Cabinet. That would be inappropriate for me to do. My mandate was to test these 7 options. I think that the feedback is very clear on that particular option, and I will be reporting that faithfully when I go back to Cabinet.
So if the feedback's very clear and you want to work with the sector as constructively as possible, you're going to listen to the feedback, aren't you?
Sure. That was, again, that was the advice I also gave the Prime Minister, that we would engage in this very unusual pre-policy development process, put these 7 options on the table and then discuss them over a very, you know, reasonable timeline. But I can't preempt Cabinet. No. I need to go back and finish that step. Yes. And hear back from them. And so, you know, my report back will be informed, absolutely.
When are you reporting back? Will you be reporting back as soon as next Monday?
No.
Okay. Can I preempt Cabinet, because I'm not a member of it, so I'm not bound by collective responsibility, and say it would not be unreasonable of me to conclude that global budget funding is gone?
Look, it's, you know, we run an active democracy, John, so, you know, people can certainly draw those conclusions, but part of that democracy is having a Cabinet and one to whom I go with next steps. And so on this particular one, it's very clear, I would say, that there is no support for this particular element.
Okay, thank you, Minister. Let's talk about the stuff that there is support for, and we should say some of it is conditional support. So in fact, lots of it is conditional support, but that's fine because this is a process of toing and froing. I've been speaking to people in the sector, and I've been speaking to John Gerritsen, our education correspondent, and their sense is that one of the things that matters to you most of all is in fact targeted funding for schools. You really want to pursue children that you see need the most help. Now, if you concede on global budgets, if you are dignified and walk away from that, you can go back to the unions, you can go back to the principals, you can go back to the trustees and say, hey, I come in good faith, let's talk. You can pursue targeted funding better, can't you?
So I want to be very clear. I am interested in targeted funding, but I mean for every New Zealand child in our system, because they all have different and many common learning needs. So the proposal is in 3 parts in this funding review. One is, what does it cost to deliver a year's worth of learning to every child, knowing that that year's worth of learning gets more complex as they go through our system. The next part of it is, what should we should we top it up with for those kids who are at most risk of not being educationally successful? And the third part is, what do we top up for rural, small, isolated schools? So those are the 3 components, and each of them have targeting within them, and recognise that we both want all our kids who are doing well to do even better, and to make sure we pick up those who are being left behind in the system. So it's not either one or the other, it is all of our young people.
Are you hoping, therefore, to be able to have meaningful talks with unions, for example, the NZEI and the PPTA, who are at the moment having meetings against global budgets? It looks like global budgets are gone. Are you going to say, hey, let's see if we can work out some kind of consensus here that we all want to see happen?
Of course, and the last 5 years has demonstrated a track record of listening and learning and putting in place processes and platforms whereby we can have those conversations. So we now meet, every quarter with leaders across the sector. They're on every working group that we put together to improve aspects of our education system. This funding review group has been taken very seriously, and their report is being taken very seriously for the very purpose of finding what works best for every one of our children.
The report is being taken very seriously because there's some stuff that really matters to you that you want to get through, right? So you've got to start working with these people effectively.
Not start, continue working with them.
Okay.
Yes.
So, of the things that the report's looked at, 7, one is out, which is global budgets. Others are proceeding conditionally. What's most important to you?
Oh no, they're all important to me, and getting feedback from across the sector, from parents, from stakeholders is important to me, and it is to Cabinet as well. And that's why the timeline for the development of proposals is such a long one. If the system was to change in any significant way, then implementation at the earliest would be in 2019 or 2020. The next decile recalculation is due in 2019, and if we're going to be doing anything to change what I'm on record as saying is a very blunt but well-intentioned approach, then we need to have another process in place. So we want to take the time to get this right. Taxpayers put over $11 billion into this system because it's critical. So we have a responsibility to ensure that there's a good line of sight from the amount of funding going in to the results that kids are experiencing when they leave our system. And I think that every New Zealand parent wants the best, well, we know that, wants the best for their children. And this is this is a lot of money. I said ship, I was about to say ship load of money that goes in there, and we want to make sure that it's making the difference for every kid, the right amount to the right kid at the right time.
Right. Thank you, Minister, for joining us. Just before you go, a message to the people from the PPTA and the NZEI who are meeting together at the moment in their thousands because they're concerned about global budgets. They don't have to worry anymore, do they?
Look, we're in a process, and we will continue talking to the PPTA and NZEI and to parents, but I am a member of the Cabinet. The Cabinet is also seeing and hearing, what this feedback is, but I will go back in accordance with our process and report not only on this feedback, but also what our options are for next steps. We want to get this right.
Thanks, Minister. It is a shipload of money, and we appreciate your time.